Yes. My screen is visible to you?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
So let us start with pictures. Uh, Generally in algebra, we don't use too much pictures, colored pictures, but I'm trying to use in my lectures. So let us start with pictures. You can see it is a picture of set of balls, many balls. So question is that let us find a partition of this set of balls. So of course we can get a mini partition of these balls. We can take one ball and it is also a partition of this set. But just for the simplicity and nice uh, partition, I will take a partition of, suppose this is set is X. So I will take a partition of this set, I will call X, of say, partition into color wise. So this R is a subset of all red balls. Blue is a subset of all blue balls, and similarly, lime green is a set of all lime green ball, and you have a orange. Oh, I think I missed green, yellow, and pink. So pink is missing, so I can add here one, two, three, four, five. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So you have a 6 color, and this is the one partition of this set. And I can also write in nice way there. I can say, okay, two balls are related. Suppose X and Y are two balls. If and only if X and Y have same color. Then I think you can recall that what I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about the relation on a set. And here in example, the relation I gave using a partition of a set. So now whatever I said, and you can also realize that the partition is basically disjoint. It is not like that you intersection is always empty between the two subsets. So let us mathematically write these terms. So a relation, on a set X is just a subset of X cross X. So let A be a subset of X cross X, and of course it is a relation on X. So I will denote any point AB in A like this. A is related to B. So whenever AB is any point in A, then I will call that A is related to B. And we denote a relation on X by this tilde. Thus, a relation on X is nothing but just a choice of a subset of X cross X. So what is the relation now? Relation is just a choice of a subset A inside X cross X. And this relation is nice, and it is called an equivalence relation if it satisfies three properties. First property is called as a reflexive, means each element of X is related to itself. So if such thing happens, it means X comma X is always an element of the set A. And symmetric means for every X and Y, if X is related to Y, then Y should also be related to X. And third property is called transitive property. It means if X is related to Y and Y is related to Z, then it forces that X should be related to Z. So if all three properties any relation which satisfies all three property, then we call such relation as an equivalence relation. And they are very important. I will soon tell you why. So for example, if you take a set of integers and define a relation A is related to B. If and only if A is less than or equals to B, then you can easily see that it is not an equivalence relation. Why? Because if I take a 2 and 3, then of course 2 is less than or equals to 3, and 2 is related to 3, but 3 is not related to 2. And hence this symmetric property doesn't hold for this relation, and that's why it is not an equivalence relation. Similarly, I can define many relation on X by saying that A is related to B if and only if A is equals to B. And it is easy to verify that actually this relation is an equivalence relation. And I said in beginning, any relation is just a choice of a subset of X cross X. So in that case, if I want to write this relation in terms of that choice, then that choice A is nothing but collection of all point A comma A inside the product X cross X. Similarly, I can define a new relation on a set of all students. Any question? Okay. So let X be the set of all students in the class. Then I can define a relation on this set X by saying that A is related to B if and only if the last digit of roll numbers of student A and B are same. And again, you can check that actually this is an equivalence relation. And whenever you have a group and you have some subgroup H of G, then again I can also define some relation, and that relation is defined like that: A is related to B if and only if AB inverse belonging H. And it is also easy to check that it is an equivalence relation. So we have a many example of equivalence relation, and we are very interested to understand this equivalence relation for a group. But I said in beginning, I have taken a set, I partition them, and then I have defined a relation. Now I want to do conversely. Let X be a set, and let definition, I will define what is mean by partition. A partition P of X is a collection of a subset Pi of X such that X can be written as a union of Pi's, and intersection between any two partition P1, Pi and Pj should be empty. Sorry. Means all Pi's are disjoint and X can be written as completely union of them. So theorem says that whenever you have an equivalence relation on X, there is a unique partition of X, and the element of the partitions are the basically equivalence classes of this, and vice versa. That is a given a partition P on X, we can always construct an equivalence relation on X such that it partitions, and these partitions associated to this relation is precisely P. So what is mean by equivalence class, I will define here. So let this tilde be an equivalence relation on the set X and A be any point in X. Then the equivalence class of A is defined at all B in X such that B is related to A. So here, whatever term I have mentioned, the definition is here. And sometimes we'll, for example, if you take this relation 4 in example 4, then the equivalence class of 2 is whole H. So if you take H is equal to 2Z and G is equal to Z, then equivalence class of this element 2 is whole H. So some notation, we will write the set of equivalence classes by X by tilde, where it has all equivalence classes of A, and for each class I will take only one A. So example, let X is equal to Z, and now take a subset of Z cross Z represented by An, it has all element A and B such that A minus B is equals to Kn for some K in Z. Then, of course, it is a subset of Z cross Z, so it will give you a relation on Z. Now, it is easy to check that the relation given by An, denoted by tilde n, then which is basically saying that A is related to B if and only if A minus B is equals to Kn for some K belonging Z. And you can check that actually this relation is an equivalence relation. Why? Because A minus A is equals to 0 dot n, which implies that A is related to A. And similarly, you can verify the other condition, and in that you get this relation is actually equivalence relation, and hence you can talk about this set Z by this tilde n, which is a set of all equivalence classes of this relation. And basically this set is nothing but equivalence class of 0, equivalence class of 1, and till equivalence class of n minus 1. And it is also easy to verify that the equivalence class of n is same as the equivalence class of 0. Why? Because 0 and n are related. So here is the calculation. So 0, yes, one more notation. Sometimes in case of Z, in many group you can find this notation bar A, and they also use it to denote the equivalence classes. So I am writing both and hope there will be no confusion. So 0 bar is the set of equivalence class of the element 0, and which is also same as the equivalence class of n, and it has all elements of the type Kn which are related to 0. And similarly, equivalence class of 1 has all element 1, n plus 1, 2n plus 1, 3n plus 1, and similarly. And thus we get. And you can also easily see that this Z is the disjoint union of all these n classes. Now some more observation on this set. So in this set, I can always define a operation like that. I can send A bar and B bar to A plus B bar. And you can easily check that this is a well-defined operation, binary operation on this set. And also with respect to this set, this operation, this set forms a cyclic group. And any A which is co-prime to n gives you the generating set for G by tilde. And for example, the Kelly table for Z by tilde 4 is as follows. 0 bar, 1 bar, 2 bar, 3 bar, and here you have a 0 bar, 1 bar, 2 bar, 3 bar, and there's some like a 2 bar is 0 bar, 3 bar, 2 bar is 1 bar is given here. And I think in last lecture you have already seen this type of table for Z4. And here there is another representation of the same group in different way because this group wise they are same, but set wise I am defining in different way. Here set is defined as a equivalence classes, and it is not very difficult to check that actually this group Z by tilde n is same as Zn. So whenever I say Zn, it means that I'm talking about Z by tilde n or Zn, both are same because both are isomorphic. So now it gives you a intuition to ask a natural question, more natural question. Can we define a group structure on G by tilde, where tilde is any equivalence relation on G? So whenever you have a group and you have an equivalence relation on that group, so you can ask, can we define some group structure on G by tilde? And of course we can do, but more you expect that this group structure is basically coming from the group structure of G. So we will keep this question in mind and hopefully we'll answer in some particular case. So now, since we are interested in equivalence relation in groups, so now try to find some application in group theory. So let G be a group and H be a subgroup of G, then I can define a relation tilde on G by A is related to B if and only if B inverse A is in H. And of course, this is an equivalence relation. You can check. Reflexive is satisfied because whenever you take A belonging G, then A inverse A is identity and it is in H. Hence, A is related to A for every A belonging H. Symmetric, if you take A and B in G such that A is related to B, it means B inverse A belonging H. But H is a subgroup, so it inverse is A inverse B is also in H. But A inverse B in H implies that B is related to A. And similarly, we can check for the transitivity, and hence we get an equivalence relation using a subgroup. So whenever I have a subgroup H in G, then I can define at least one relation, and which is an equivalence relation. Again, you can check this equivalence relation on Z when H is equal to 3Z is same as whatever you have defined before. Now some more definition, and then I will connect equivalence relation with this definition. So so far any question?
No, sir.
Okay. So let G be a group and H be any subgroup. Then I am defining a set AH, where A is any element in G, and this set contains all element which has a product of A with any element in H. So any element of the type AH, where H belongs in H, is this set. Similarly, I define a set capital HA which has all element of the form HA, where H belongs in capital H. So first one I will call them left coset of H, and second one I will call them right cosets of H. And now some example. In this example, you can easily check that what is the left coset and right coset. So similarly, if I take G is equal to S3, which is written like that, and H is equal to group generated by 1 and 1, 2, which is just a group of order 2, then with respect to this group, I can compute what is the left cosets and what are the equivalence classes with respect to this relation. So I have defined this relation. So with respect to this relation, I am just computing what are the equivalence classes here. And if I see carefully that these equivalence classes are exactly same as the left coset. So what is the equivalence class of 2, 3? This is same as this. And if I compute the left coset of H with respect to this point 2, 3, then it is also same. So you can ask the question, are these left coset and the equivalence classes defined above, they have a relation? So answer is yes. And now, so answer is yes. And with respect to this equivalence relation, the equivalence classes are nothing but the all left cosets of H in G. So which is very clear in the above example, and also in general, if you compute the equivalence class of E, then it has all element A belong in G such that E inverse A belong in H. That means A is related to E. But since E inverse A belong in H, so you can write E inverse A is equal to H. It means A is equal to H. It means A belong in H. So this set are same. This class and this is same. Similarly, equivalence class of G is same as the left coset of G, H with respect to this element G. And since equivalence classes we have seen that they also gives you a partition of the set, so we can write the group G as a union of disjoint cosets of H. Either write disjoint cosets of H, and also you can write them as a you can write them as a left disjoint quotient of H. And you can also define another relation. A is related to B if and only if A, B inverse belong in H. And with respect to that relation, you can check that the equivalence classes are same as the right cosets of H. So now there is one exercise which you can all discuss in tutorial. If G be a group and H be a subgroup, then the number of left coset is same as the number of right cosets. Now in a group, we have seen that how the left cosets are coming and how the right cosets are coming and how to define them without from where they coming. But yes, source of coming is that equivalence relation and classes. So let G be a group and H be a subgroup of this. So now I will define the index of a subgroup inside a group G. So what is the index? Index is just an integer, and it is actually the number of left coset or number of right cosets of the subgroup. And we have proved that the number is in this exercise, the number is same for both. Either you take left or right, but number is independent of their bad choice. So that's why I defined this index to be the number of left or right cosets of H in G. For example, if you take Z and you take a subgroup 2Z, then the number of left coset of 2Z inside Z is 2, and hence the index is 2. Similarly, for Z and Z, index is good. Any question?
No, sir.
Okay. So now I will come to the theorem, which is very famous and very useful theorem in group theory. Let G be a finite group and H be a subgroup of G. Then theorem says that the cardinality of H multiplied with the index of H is same as the order of the group. So order of H, which is written like this, represented like this, index of this is same as the order of the group. So how to prove this? Very simple proof. We have already actually proved. So again, we will consider a relation, this, and with respect to this relation, we have just observed that the equivalence classes are same as the left cosets of H. And I proved that whenever you have equivalence relation, you can always partition the set into equivalence classes. So it means I can write G as a disjoint union of left cosets. So now I will prove that if I take two left cosets, then they both have the same number of elements. So how to prove that? So here is a proof. Let us define a map between two left cosets. So it is better to define a map between H and AH, because H is also one left coset. So if the cardinality of H is same as any left coset, then cardinality of between two left coset is always same. So let us define a map phi from H to AH, and map is defined like H is going to AH. Then my claim is that this map is actually a 1-1 and onto map, bijective map. So let us prove why it is 1-1. So 1-1 is clear. Why? If I take phi h1 is equals to phi h2, which it means a h1 is equals to a h2, and again by using the left cancellation property in group, we can reduce that h1 is equals to h2. Similarly, I can prove that phi is untrue. How? If I take any element G here, then I know this G is written as AH, and now consider the image of G can be written as AH, and now image of H under this map is actually EH is equal to G, and thus phi is untrue. So now you have proved that G is a disjoint union of left coset, and each two left coset has the same number of elements. So how many number of left coset we have? That is equals to the index of the group. So the cardinality of group is automatically same as the product of the number of all left coset and number of element in one left coset, and that is equals to this. And this theorem is very important. Important means what? It gives you some nice result about the group. If G is a finite group and A is any element in G, then the order of A always divide the order of the group. And why? Because I can always take H is equal to the subgroup generated by A. And we have just seen that theorem. This order H product with index is equals to mod G. It means order H divides order G. So this group order divides order of G. But what is order of this subgroup? It is exactly same as the order of this element, and hence order of A divides order of G. Also corollary, if G is a finite group and A is any element, then I can prove that A power mod G is always identity. So order of if you take any element and take a power of A, which is you take A power mod G, which is the order of G, then it is always an identity. Any questions so far? No. So now come back to our original question, which I have asked in the case of equivalence relation. And when I defined equivalence classes, then I was asking that can we give us some nice structure on G by tilde, such that G some nice operation such that G by tilde is a group. Now I have defined a special relation using a subgroup, and that relation is basically related to left cosets of the that subgroup. So with respect to that relation, the problem can be converted into this. What is the problem? Let G be a group and H be a subgroup of G. Does the operation AHBS equal to ABH gives you a group binary operation on set of the left cosets. So of course answer is true. At least we have already observed that if Z is G is equal to Z and H is equal to NZ, then we have already observed that G by NZ has a group structure. G by left cosets of NZ inside Z has a group structure, which we have denoted by Z N, which we have denoted Zn or Z by tilde N. Actually, this idea can be generalized and we can prove more general. It is true for abelian group. But in general, if you take S3 and take a subgroup H and calculate this product A, B, H, then it is basically H. But since each left coset has a different representative, and like in this case, this left coset of 1, 2 with respect to element 1, left coset of H with respect to element 1, 2 is same as the left coset of H with respect to element 1, 2, 3. So if you take both different representative and calculate this product, then you will realize that this product is not same, and hence this operation is not a binary operation. If I define operation like that, then this operation is not a binary operation. So it means the answer of this question is negative in general. But now, since you know this is true for at least abelian group, so natural question is that how large, what type of nice condition if I impose on H and I can get this as a group operation. So this is a motivation. So this is basically main motivation to define a normal subgroup. And this lemma says that let G be a group and N be any subgroup of G, then these following statements are equivalent. And what are the important statement? 1 and 3 I am looking. So 1 is saying that if N is a normal subgroup of G, then 3 is it is equivalent to 3, which is saying that the operation ANBN is equals to ABN is a well-defined binary operation on the set of left cosets, and which was our expectation. And since it is a if and only, means both conditions are equivalent, so it is also telling you that you have solved this problem completely. Completely means group operation forces that the subgroup should be normal, and if it is a normal, then automatically it is a group operation. And there are many version equivalent statement in the case of normal subgroup. So I'm skipping this statement, but yes, now because I have defined in last lecture normal subgroup, now here is the motivation why this normal coming in picture. I will skip the proof of this theorem. You can see in notes. So now from this lemma, one more observation is there. If you see in this lemma, there is one seventh part which says that if you take any A in G, then this left coset of N by A is same as the right coset of N by A. So now in the case of normal subgroup, the left cosets and right cosets are same. So I can define this notation. Yes. So we will use this notation G by N to denote the group of cosets. So now I am not worrying about the left coset and right coset, because in the case of normal group, left coset is same as right coset. So this problem is solved, and I can denote this by G by N. And this is a basically group with respect to the operation just defined above. With respect to the operation is. So again, one more observation. We know that MZ is a normal subgroup of Z. So again, you can talk about this group Z by MZ. This is now a group, and it is easy to check that it is isomorphic to our earlier group defined, which was Z and. Now I will talk about, so for any question on normal subgroup?
No, sir.
Yes. So after understanding the normal subgroup, I will come to again to understand the maps and some nice property we want to explore between the maps of two groups, which we have already defined as a homomorphisms. So before that, we need some more results. So let us go with one by one. So I will define what is mean by product of two subgroups. So let G be a group and H and K are the subgroup of G, then I can define their product. Even you can define the product of any two subsets of G. And the product is defined like that. You pick an element H in capital H and K in capital K and just take their product. And the set of all these elements is you define them as a product HK, which makes sense for any two subsets. And of course, you have seen this just now, because if you see the set of left coset, then it is basically nothing but a product of two subsets. One is subset is just singleton A, and another subset is H. So now, because whenever we have a subset of a group, then we have a natural question: is it a group? So answer is again not very good. In the case of abelian groups, answer is good, that it is always a subgroup. But if in S3 you have example of subgroups H and K, such that product HK is like this and KH is like that, both HK and KH are not a subgroup of this. Why? Because this element is there and it has a no inverse. And similarly here you have this element which is a no inverse in this. And also one more observation, that these sets are not equal. So next lemma is telling us when this product is a group, and lemma is like that. Again, H and K are the subgroups of G. Then product is a subgroup of G if and only if HK is equals to KH. So that was the observation. We have realized that here. And this observation was very crucial, and actually it was playing very important role. And now role is very clear to us that this observation is basically related to the subgroup property of the product. And corollary of this, if K is a normal subgroup of G, then we don't need to worry about this operation because it is automatically satisfied, and hence the product is always a subgroup. And in general, we have seen that in case of abelian group, all subgroups are normal, so their situation is much better, and the product is always a subgroup, and which we have seen in the example this, because Z was abelian, so this product was very nice and it came as this. So there is one important counting of these subgroups, order counting of these subgroups. If H and K are the finite subgroup of G, then we can always prove that the order of this product HK, we don't know whether it is a group or not, but it is a set. So as a set wise, the cardinality of this set is same as the cardinality of H into the cardinality of K divided by the cardinality of H intersection. By cardinality, I always mean the number of elements in that set. So I will not prove this theorem, but I will prove this theorem using some isomorphism theorem in the case when at least one is normal subgroup and such that this is actually group. So now I will jump to the isomorphism theorems and application. But before that, if you have any questions, you can ask. Any question? No. I assume that there is no question, so let us go ahead. So isomorphism theorem. So recall the definition I said in last lecture. We say that two groups G1 and G2 are isomorphic if there exists an isomorphism phi from G1 to G2. And what is mean by isomorphism? It means that phi is a group homomorphism, phi is 1, 1, and phi is R. And we denote like this. This is the notation. G1 is isomorphic to G2. And also, if I take a collection of all groups, then this relation, isomorphism, we can define a relation between this set of all groups, and we say that two groups are related if they are isomorphic. And we can see that actually this is also an equivalence relation. G1 is related to G2, means G1 is isomorphic to G2. G2 is isomorphic to G3, it means G1 is isomorphic to G3. So please keep this remark in mind. Hopefully we'll need later. So now I will state the first isomorphism theorem. It says that let phi G1 to G2 be a group homomorphism, then G1 by kernel phi is always isomorphic to the image of phi. So I will prove this theorem. So let K is equal to kernel phi for just notation simplify. So K denote the kernel phi and define a map psi from G by K to image of phi. And the map is defined, there is some typo, one bracket is here. So now define psi sending, so this is a collection of all cosets. Now you don't care whether it is a left coset or right coset. Why? Because it can be seen easily that the kernel phi is a normal subgroup, and that's why G by K makes sense. Coset group makes sense because kernel is a normal subgroup. And also we don't care about the left and right because both are same. So here I am just taking as a left. So now this is a left coset, which is element here. I am sending this element to the phi G. What is phi G? Phi is defined here. So now it is interesting because we have just seen that each left coset can be represented in different. So suppose G1 and G2 are the two elements which gives you a same left coset. Then we have, our claim is that the image of psi is well defined. So to check that, let us check. G1 is k is equals to G2k. This means psi of G1k is equals to psi of G2k. So note that. So to so this means I have to check that this psi of G1k is equals to psi of G2k. So again, now note that G1k is equals to G2k. It implies that what? G1 is equals to basically G2k for some k in kernel. So I can write G1 G2 inverse is equal to k. So it means G1 G2 inverse belong in the kernel. Since G1 G2 inverse belong in kernel, it means phi of G1 G2 inverse is equals to identity by definition of kernel. And it means G1 G2 inverse, yes, here. So it means phi of G1 is equals to phi of G2, because just we opened it. Homomorphism property implies that phi G1 G2 inverse is equals to phi G1 phi G2 inverse, and then again taking here I will get the phi G1 is equals to phi G2, and which is same as psi of G1k. So it means psi of G1k is equals to psi of G2. Now since the map is well defined, my claim is that it is actually group homomorphism and this map is basically bijective. So to check group homomorphism, I will write psi G1k G2k, which is basically psi of G1 G2k, which is a phi of G1 G2, but phi is a group homomorphism, so I can write phi of G1 to phi of G2. But what is phi of G1? It is basically psi of G1k, and this is also psi of G2k. So it is very easy to check that actually psi is a group of homomorphism. And easily you can check that the psi is 1 1. Why? Because psi of G1k is equals to psi of G2k implies that phi G1 is equals to phi G2. And again, phi G1 is equals to phi G2 inverse is equals to identity implies that G1 G2 inverse belong in K, and hence G1k is equals to G2k. Now next claim is that this map is onto. So if I take any element in image, then of course there exists a G in G1 such that phi G is equals to X. Now my claim is that actually Gk is the element whose image is actually X. Why? Because psi of Gk is basically phi of G, and by phi of G is equals to X. So we get a psi is on, and hence we prove this theorem. And this is a very interesting theorem, and now we'll see some more application of this. So, okay, so this is basically corollary of this theorem. Any cyclic group isomorphic to, so it is saying that any cyclic group is isomorphic to either Zk or Z plus Z. So Zk is a, we have just defined, we have seen 2-3 times today, and Z is again our usual set of integers and cyclic group. So these are the only two cyclic group exist. Basically theorem is saying that there are only two cyclic group, two type of cyclic group exist. One is Z and another one is Zk. So how to prove this? So let us do. So let G be a cyclic group. Since it is a cyclic group, it means there exists an element G in capital G such that G is generated by this element small g. Now I will define a map phi from Z to G. I will take any integer n and I will send it to G power n. Well, G power n is a well-defined element in capital G. So it is also easy to check directly that this map is actually onto. Why? Why? Because any element of G is written as a power of G, and hence we get an integer n. whose image is exactly that element. So now my claim is that this map is actually onto map first. So I will prove, this map is onto, my claim is that actually this is a homomorphism also. So homomorphism is very much clear. Why? Because if you take N1, N2, then it will go to G N1 plus N2, and which can be written as G N1, G N2, and this you can write as phi N1, phi N2. So this phi N1, N2 is equal to this. So now I have defined a group homomorphism which is onto. Now I will study the two cases, and in these two cases I will deduce my theorem. So first case is that assume that the order of G is finite. So it means if order of G is finite, it means what? It means I get a number k such that G power k is equals to identity. Since G power k is equals to identity, means after G power k, I will get, for G power k, I will get, G power k is equal to identity. It means phi of k is equals to identity. It means k belongs in a kernel. Similarly, I can also check that G power 2k is also identity, and we can easily prove that the kernel of phi is nothing but the subgroup generated by k, and that is a subgroup kj. And now applying the first isomorphism theorem, which says that G by k is isomorphic to the image. But what is the image here? Image is whole G, so, and kernel is kz. So I get z by kz, which is nothing but zk, isomorphic to zk here notation, and which is isomorphic to capital G. Now I will take a case second where order of G is infinite. So in this case, since order of G is infinite, so you will not get any non-zero element in the kernel, and the kernel phi will be G. And hence, again applying the theorem, you get a G by kernel G phi is isomorphic to G. So this gives you a remark that any two cyclic groups of the same order are always isomorphic. So far, any question on first isomorphism theorem? No. So let us do some more exercise. If you have an integer m and n, two positive integers, such that m divides n, then always you can see that nz is a subgroup of mz. So like here, you can always see, suppose 2 divides 4, then you have seen that 4z is always sitting inside 2z. Now question is that I am interested what is 2z divided by 4z. Why? Because they are abelian groups. So 4z is actually normal subgroup of 2z. So you can talk about this quotient group. And now my question is, what is this group? So this exercise tells you this group is actually isomorphic to z 4 by 2, which is z2. And how to do this? It's very simple. I can define a map from nz to z by n by n, sending any n to n bar. And again, I will prove that actually you can prove that this is a homomorphism onto, and kernel is nothing but mz. And hence you will get nz by mz is isomorphic to z m by n. And similarly, you have other many exercises. So I think here you prove that the set of real numbers with respect to addition is isomorphic to the set of all positive real numbers with respect to multiplication. And this can be done by defining a map, which we have already defined yesterday, phi, which is sending any x to e power x. We have observed that it is a group homomorphism, but now I am fixing set of all positive numbers, so it means it is onto map. And then by using the theorem, we can prove that this is gives you isomorphism because kernel is 0. Why? Because kernel is, suppose some element x is in kernel, it means e power x is 1. But e power x is 1 only if x is 0. So it means this map is actually 1, 1 and hence it is a isomorphism. There are some more applications which I will skip, and I will come to the second isomorphism theorem. It says that let G be a group and H be a subgroup of G, and also assume that N be a normal subgroup of G, then this product is actually a subgroup, which we have already checked. And furthermore, the intersection H intersection N and N are the normal subgroup of H and Hn. And we get the quotient group Hn by N is isomorphic to the quotient group H by H intersection N. And all these terms make sense. Why? Because we can prove that actually H intersection N is a normal, so quotient is well defined. And then again, since N is normal in Hn, so this quotient is also well defined. So all this makes sense, and we have a nice isomorphism. And again, it is not very difficult to prove. Just we use first isomorphism theorem, and we can easily prove this theorem. And the key steps are like that. You define a map phi from H to Hn by N. And what is the map? Send any element H to Hn, left coset of H, left coset of N with respect to the point as element H inside H. And now we can actually verify that this is actually group homomorphism. This is onto, and the kernel is nothing but H intersection N. Then again, applying the first isomorphism theorem, we can easily deduce this. And note that the normality of N is very important. Why? Because first we need to show that this is a subgroup. So normality ensures you that it is always a subgroup. And also it tells you can define these things. Now I will state the third isomorphism theorem. So let G be a group and N a normal subgroup. If K is a normal subgroup of G containing N, then we always have a such type of isomorphism. G by N is a group. K by N is actually, we can prove that it is a normal subgroup of G by N. And so that's why G by N coset of K by N makes sense. Coset group of K by N, coset group of G by N by K by N makes sense. And it is isomorphic to G by K. Again, idea is apply first isomorphism theorem for this map. Take a map phi from G by N to G by K. Map is defined like send this left coset Gn to Gk. And we can prove that this map is well defined, it is onto, and kernel is exactly K by N, and hence by the first isomorphism theorem we get. So now I will state one application of these isomorphism theorems, which we have already seen in our school days. If you have two non-zero integers m and n, then prove that the LCM of the number m and n product with the GCD of m and n is the same as the product of these two numbers. So how to prove this theorem using whatever isomorphism theorems we have done. So key idea is like that. You take a G is equal to Z, H is equal to MZ, N is equal to NZ. With respect to the addition operation, I can write this second isomorphism. I am applying a second isomorphism theorem. I can write like this. What is this? Second isomorphism theorem says that Hn divided by n is isomorphic to Hn quotient with H intersection n. So what is Hn here? Hn is basically the sum. and here N is MZ, and here H is MZ, and H intersection and K, H intersection N, which is MZ intersection MZ, which can be LCM of ABZ, and the sum is basically comes as a GCD, GCD D. So if D is a GCD of M and N, then the set MZ plus NZ is basically generated by D. So it is basically DZ. And hence, now from both sides, apply the cardinality argument. So cardinality of this is same as the cardinality of this, but cardinality of this is same as N by GCD of Mn. We have just proved here what is the cardinality of the set, this Nz by Mz. So this is a group, and the cardinality of this is same as the cardinality of this, and the cardinality of this group is same as N by N. So this group divided and here quoted with this Nz has a cardinality N by GCD of Mn, N by GCD of M, and here is LCM Mn by N, and now you multiply here and we get the result. So last theorem of today without proof, I will just state. Let S be a set and Sx denote the set of all bijective map from X to X itself, and we have observed that the set is actually forms a group with respect to the composition rule, and there is a theorem. It says that every group G is actually isomorphic to a subgroup of the symmetry group S. And I will leave this proof, and if someone is interested, then I will do in next class, and you can find it in notes. So now I will stop for my today's presentation. So any question? Any question?
Any queries?
No, sir.
Okay. Let us thank and clap for Dr. Sanjay Singh for his very informative and nice presentation. Thank you, Dr. Sanjay Singh.
Yes.
On behalf of participants and whole organizing team, I am again thanking Dr. Sanjay Kumar Singh. Thank you so much, all the participants.
Thank you. So, did you check that this 15th puzzle problem? How many of you have seen? So, just I will again present. My plan is to do in coming lectures why this type of problem is related to mathematics. But before that, I was thinking you can check how to play with this game. So I'm saying online thing, and you check what is a game. So let me present my. Can you see my screen?
Not yet, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes.
So the game is like that. In game, you will get this 4x4 square matrix, okay? And you have a number from 1 to 50, and always you will get a one blank part. So a game is like that. You arrange them like a 1, 2, 3, 4 in increasing order, and keep last as a blank. Okay.
Okay.
So you can do like this. You can come to 1 here, and then you can play some more and try to get 2 somehow, like this. So now you can understand how I'm playing. I'm somehow trying to make 1, 2, 3 and going down. So there are some combination in this game which you can never solve, and there are, of course, like this game can be solved easily. So there is two type of question. First, if I arrange them in different random way, can you always solve this game or not? This is a question, and this question, as a mathematician, we can answer this, and we can use the permutations, whatever permutation group we have defined, and it can easily tells you when you can solve or not. So this is my goal, to discuss this problem in my lecture series, and I can share this link with you. Even you can just Google it, and you can find many link where you can play online, because I don't think you can buy it nowadays. It is available easily, so it is not available easily. So better you play online. So this is a link I want to share in your chat box. So I request everyone to at least go to the link and play at least once. Whenever I explain, then you can understand it much better way. Okay, I have to say.
Sir.
Yes. Hello.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
From participant side. Yeah, Phonendra, you may ask. Phonendra?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So let us thank once again Dr. Sanjay Singh. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank
you.
you.
Excuse me, sir.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
Yes, Rahul, you may.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So I want to ask one question. That what is the question basically related to this 15 puzzle problem? Please repeat the
Question is
question.
that if I arrange them, matlab, you don't know the position of numbers if you want to start your game. So in that, if I arrange them in any random way, question is that can you always arrange them in 1, 2, 3, 4, 15 order? That is a question.
Okay.
Okay. So there are arrangement which you can never do like this. So what is the good arrangement? I just see, this is arrangement one. So one thing I can do, can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
So I can write like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all same. And here just I interchange 14 with 15. So here I put 14. Here, can you see my mouse movement?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
If here I put a 14 and here I put a 15, then you can prove later that it cannot be solved. This puzzle you cannot solve. Even all are arranged, only one is disturbed, 14 and 15, and everything is in the increasing order. Then you can never solve this type of problem.
Okay.
So mathematics, very basic mathematics is involved here, and which you have already seen that permutations group. So we need some more definitions like odd permutation and even permutation. And using that, I can explain you when you can solve and when you cannot solve. And of course, when you can solve and you can give it to someone, okay, I can tell you as a mathematician, you can solve and let's go and play. And if you want to make so I will give more history about this problem, because there are many things related to this problem. So better I will explain everything or discuss it together. Okay? So
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
I hope that problem is now clear to you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Any other queries? I think no, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We can leave now.